What's up, homies? We are back with another cinematography breakdown, and this was on behalf of Gracie Barra, which is one of the largest jiu-jitsu clubs in the world, if not the largest. And the whole piece was centered around Braulio, who is a absolute G. He's an unbelievable guy. And this piece was focused around telling a bit of a short story of his legacy and his thought process. But to get the ball rolling, I'm just gonna hit play on that video and let it roll for you now. I'll see you on the other side.
You can explain anything in life using the jiu-jitsu as a metaphor. Anything that I do, I want to be the best. I have achieved beyond my dreams that I could ever imagine. I've won many Pan American championships, European championships, world championships. Traveled the world, competed with the best of the best.
Ladies and gentlemen,
if you want to be a world champion, you cannot just focus on that destination.
please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
You need to focus on the process. You need to focus on what you can achieve next.
Fighting out of the red corner,
Okay, so we're back. So let's break this down a little bit. In essence, it's a relatively simple shoot. There's not loads and loads going on. We've essentially got three scenes here. We've got one where he's out in the open and he's like reflecting and meditating. We've got one where we're in the gym and we've curated the shots to make them look real cinematic. We've used a lot of backlight. We've done one which is more on the fly, which is the elements where he's actually like teaching in classes. So it's showing him in his environment doing what he actually does on a daily basis. It's a relatively simple, 3 locations, simple shot selection, but there's just some things in here which really bring it to life. So let's break it down a little bit. So first of all, we start off and we've got this shot here, and this shot is dead simple, but what we're doing here is we're framing him centrally to guide our viewers' attention to exactly where we want them to look in the frame, bang in the middle. The thing that makes this frame look really nice, really inviting, is very much around the balance. So we've got the bottom line here, we've got our subject in the center line here, he's also in this nice like balanced shape. And then despite the fact that this back line here isn't perfectly balanced, it also follows this line where it goes up and down. So it breaks up the scene from that balance that's in the other areas, but it has this kind of flow that runs through it, which makes it balanced in its composition. And it's just that little bit of disruption to the frame that makes it interesting, but still keeps continuity in that balance. But this shot here, really dead simple shot. We've got the sun over in this direction, beaming in light. So we're leaning into backlight. But in essence, we've got the sun here, it's coming down, it's backlighting him. We've got real nice balance and composition throughout the frame. And it's a relatively simple shot. The other thing that we've got here is also just, if I press play, there's just that little bit of handheld movement, and you'll see that throughout the whole piece. And we wanted to do that to bring a bit of a human element to it, bring the viewer closer into the character that we're trying to give them the context of. This next shot, we've got a tight. So here, again, it's all been naturally lit. We're using the sun that's in this direction, coming over here. But what is it about this frame that makes it look interesting? Well, what you can see is actually the only thing that's in detail is his hand here. So when we're cutting from that previous frame, this one, to this one, it cuts really nicely. The center point and the focus point that we want the viewer to focus on is bang in the center, so the eyes don't have to jump around and move. Now there's some other factors in here which make this an interesting frame, and the main thing is this bit here. So this is the grass. You can see the strands of grass in the foreground. And also this hand and this knee is acting as a foreground element. And then behind him, you have the trees here. So in essence, what you've got is 3 layers that are happening within the frame. So you've got the foreground layer here, you've got the focal point, the center point, and then you've got this background layer here. And the reason why this is important is because in order to build an interesting looking frame, a frame that looks good, it's all about adding depth to it. And the ways that you can add depth are numerous, but 2 really useful ways that you can do it, and simple ways that you can do it, is 1, with light, and 2, with foreground elements, midground elements, background elements. So here we've got that background, middle ground, foreground, builds that depth. And then from that lighting perspective, that sun is coming in over here, so you can just see it shining over this fist here. So he's in shadow, the shadow on his arm there, the shadow inside his hand there. And because the light is behind him and it's creating those shadows, it means that there's contrast in the image, and that's adding more depth as well. So again, really simple shot, but simple details that really elevate the production value. Finally, in this first sequence, this one. And this one is using things I've spoken about in the last two. However, we're breaking the rule a little bit here. So we've got the sun coming in over here, but it's still offering a little bit of shadow on this side of the face. So we're still keeping a little bit of the depth. We've also got these foreground elements. Brilliant. Okay, so that's building more depth into the image. We also have these background elements, and when we put them in the context of having him in the center, which is universal across those first three shots, the eye line stays in the same place. We have the foreground elements, and you'll also be able to see that we're shooting in an upward angle here. So the reason why you would choose to do that is to give the allure of power in a frame. So conversely, if you were going to shoot somebody from a top-down perspective, it kind of gives the indication that they're a little bit smaller, a bit fragile, a bit weak, a bit insecure. If you shoot from a low angle looking up, you'll see this a lot in like Hollywood films where they're shooting action scenes for superheroes. There'll often be these big push-ins that move upwards. And you know, for this, it's a really simple shot. We position the camera low, we aim it high, we get this background, middle ground, foreground. It's a big, powerful shot. And then from a composition perspective, we keep him in the center. We keep this like triangle shape, which was consistent with the first frame. And we also have the sun coming in from this direction, which is just giving a bit of contrast on this side of the face and adding a bit more interest to the image. So these three shots are a really great example of using the location that you have around you, using natural light, and using elements in the frame that are there in that middle ground, foreground, background to build depth into the image. Another final point on these three images is just the selection of wardrobe. So when we spoke with Braulio, this is a piece where we wanted to highlight Gracie Barra, the club, in the center of his journey. And we've got right in the center of the frame on the very first shot, the Gracie Barra logo on the back of his t-shirt. It's really subtle. It's not in your face and it doesn't take away from the frame. And again, in this third frame here, it isn't taken away from the shots. It's there in the center, but it's subtle for the viewer to see. In this next section of the video, we move into some of these quick frames. This is a technique that is used to almost signify historical elements. So put black and white on it, we put a little bit of grain and flicker on there, and it just tells the viewer a bit of history, and it encapsulates the person in a short snapshot. He lets us know like, okay, this guy is around, he's a champion, he's won some stuff. And also the voiceover in there that says, you know, anything that I do, I want to be the best. It just really sets the parameters of who this person is and what their mindset is. But those elements where you do those breakups, where it looks a little bit dirty on the frame, they're really useful as a way to tell a historical moment and just give it a bit of context to your character. So in these frames and this section of the video, this is where we went into the gym and we really wanted to control the environment and make these images look absolutely unbelievable. So this is the first one here. In this frame, we're staying consistent with that central theme. So he's, you know, positioned in the middle of the frame here. But just some things to draw attention to with this frame that make it interesting is you'll see this window, it's almost blown out a little bit and there's a little bit of this flare. And you can see it's separating him from the background. It's coming over his shoulder here. It's coming over his shoulder here. And then the reason why we chose to shoot in this direction is because we wanted to use the light from the sun to backlight our subject. So where we were in the environment, the sun sets over here. So we wanted to lean into the natural light that was there and then enhance that. So then we put in a lighting fixture just off frame over here, pumped a bit of light. And again, what we've got here is this backlight separating him, building that texture, pulling him out from the background. This light here, adding a bit of visual interest, separating, create those pockets of light, that depth. But in these scenes, we wanted it to be, pretty epic. And we lent into this very strong backlight from the sun over here. So you'll see that consistently. And then one other thing that we've got in here, which will become more prominent in some of the other shots, that makes it really interesting and just gives it that texture, which is, you see images that are shot and they look really clinical and clean, and then you see other ones that they have texture and you think, well, how have they got that? And the secret ingredient is haze. So what we did is we pumped loads of haze into this environment in various places, and that really gives you a lot of visual interest, and you can like almost capture these rays that are coming off the lighting fixtures. So this one, I think this was just on the hoof. We went in, we shot a class, we got a few different shots, but this is another frame. It's a dead simple frame. He's teaching, he's coaching, but we use the techniques that we had earlier in the video. Even though this has got no lighting on it, you can see the sun's coming in over here, so we're trying to position our camera over in this direction, so we're getting the shadow side of his face. That's going to build depth into it. So we're shooting from this direction to get that depth into the image from what you see. Also, we're not just shooting, stood up directly looking at him. We've got low, so it's an interesting angle. And that interesting angle, that low angle, puts this person here and this person here. That builds a foreground element that makes it more interesting to look at. You can then see the subject in the center or just off center in this example, and then the background here. So that principle of building depth using foreground elements, using light direction, and using foreground, middle ground, background to build an interesting frame, even when it's something which is on the fly like this. This is literally, we picked up the camera, we've gone and positioned the camera for this shot when he's mid-class, is this thought that's gone into it. And these are simple things just to keep in your mind. If you're shooting a wedding, you're shooting an event, you're shooting a documentary, anything that's a bit more run and gun, where you are just like capturing the frame, if you can just lean into these simple principles to make your frame more interesting, it will really elevate your production value. So here again is where we have loads of haze in the room. We've got this big backlight, we've got a beautiful flare coming off there, just adding all this like interest and texture. It's a really cool frame. That's one of my favorite ones. And again, this one is just using the same principle. So we've got 60 frames a second on here, so it's in slow motion, but we've got a bit of haze, we've got the light beaming through, creating these little pockets, these shafts of light on here, and this depth. And then just a simple movement. See, it's all handheld, it's all just got a little bit of that natural movement to it. And again here, just another subtle one where we're just showing the brand here, Gracie Barra. Nothing too in your face, just very subtle throughout. This one, again, love this frame. The guy's a 5th Dan black belt, absolute assassin. But yeah, you got this checkered effect where you got light, dark, light, dark. So it's just, you got those 5 strands there which are building interest into the frame, but right in the center, we've got this thing which is his belt. And this one as well, it's got that haze in the background, adding that texture. And then you can see this use of the backlight here just puts that light around the belt. You can see there's just this little light that separates it from the background, really makes that the focal point of the frame, drawing the viewer's attention to this guy is got his black belt, he's got 5 dans on it, he's legit. And then this frame here, this one is a really cool frame. We've gone from those tight shots where we're showing the details of him, and then we're revealing him in his gi. We've got this real strong backlight. He's got a bit of a moody look, pulled a bit of a pose, a bit of a head turn on there just to add a bit of dramatic effect. You can see that backlight is really separating him here, and you can see the work the haze is doing here just to add that texture to the whole frame. Yeah, wicked. We've supplemented this backlight here with a lighting fixture just here, pumping a bit of light into the left, and you can see also there's a little bit of light on this side of the face, so we're losing a bit of detail. So we had a big bounce over here just to pump a little bit of light back in. So a bounce, for anybody that's wondering what that is essentially any material that you can bounce light off to push light back into the frame. So what you typically see is, a big white piece of card where the light from the sun comes in, it hits over here, and it just puts a little bit of light back in this direction just to fill in so we don't lose all of the detail on his face. It doesn't look like he's completely in shadow. And bounce lighting is a really common technique that's used to take the edge off the harshness of light. If you put light directly onto something, it can be pretty harsh. If you put diffusion in front of it, so you put cloth in front of it, it softens it a little bit. If you bounce a light onto something and then the reflection from that light comes onto your subject, it's super soft, and it also looks very natural as well. And then finally, let's move on to this little sequence here where, okay. So here we use really strong sound design, but we also shot this. It's a load of macros of his face, and we wanted to have these little cutaways and do this face reveal in the context of him speaking about him as a competitor. So we had these red and blues, these strong contrasting colors, but we also had it pitch black. It was black, and then you're just seeing these little pockets of red detail on his face. And this was all intentional, so we could cut them together in this way. Blackout, red, anger, danger. You can see here there's these little cutaways where we got him to like scream at the camera, just melding the frame together to show these like different mindsets that he's in. Screaming down the barrel of the lens, real red, signaling aggression, signaling that he's ready to go to battle. So we use this as a way to break up that bit of the story when he's speaking about his historic time as a competitor and the mindset that he was in. And then here we've just got this payoff of the whole scene where we cut away from the tights and then we reveal a full face shot. It's very split lit here. We're leaning into this red very strongly, but we've just got a little bit of movement in that shot where his head is moving up just to reveal as well. As you can see, there's a lot of things going on in that piece, but in essence, we're using simple techniques and principles, but just executing them well. So those techniques are building depth with lighting, building depth with foreground, middle ground, and background, adding some movement into the shots, leaning into backlighting, and then that compositional thought process just to build power in the character in the frame. Of course, you can shoot great frames, but the thing that really brings it to life is the edit. And we had an editor called Elroy Salzo work on this one. Really great dude. He's got some proper flair, especially when it comes to these sorts of sports videos, because the edit is really the thing that takes it from those shots to that kind of 4D state where you've got the audio, the music, the sound, and it all comes to life and gets you, and the pacing and all that sort of stuff. So shout out to Elroy, appreciate his edit on this one, and shout out to all the crew that worked on it at Stormworks and beyond. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, do me a favor, oil up that head, drop a little headbutt on that subscribe button. That is the only thing that I'll ask of you. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Nice one, peace.